These are the 10 worst girlfriends Brian Griffin has ever dated. Kicking things off at number 10, we visit the episode Whistle While Your Wife Works, where Brian discovers that maybe, just maybe, there's more to a partner than just good looks. We start with Stewie, already irritated, fuming over Brian ghosting him over their brunch plans. Brian comes up with a pretty lame excuse, and Stewie is definitely not buying it.
Hey there. We were supposed to have brunch this morning.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I had a late night.
Late night, huh?
Fast forward, and Brian agrees to introduce Stewie to his new girlfriend. I'm still not sure why he thought that'd be a good idea. Stewie's ready to throw shade and verbally annihilate the monstrosity he expects her to be. But man, is he in for a surprise.
Don't worry, Brian. If she's as ugly as I think she is, I'll look at her once and then I'll go bleh, bleh, all over the place.
Hi, Brian. Oh my God, who's your cute little friend?
Oh my.
Nice.
Stewie's very surprised Brian actually scored a blonde. He's still in shock until she decides to open her mouth, and that's when it all begins to make sense to him. She's clearly not the sharpest tool in the shed.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Brian! I was watching something on TV about this guy named Hitler. Somebody should stop him.
Stewie finds out she's as dumb as a wall, and he can't stop rubbing it in Brian's face. You know, Stewie's gonna milk this moment, especially when he finds out Brian's been telling her he's in a detective agency. Really, Brian, first a writer and now a detective?
Okay, well, Stewie has to go now.
What are you talking about? I want some more of Jillian's delicious lemonade.
Later, at home, Brian tries to defend Jillian, but come on, he's clearly in denial. Stewie asks him the million-dollar question. What do they actually talk about? This is where Brian's argument comes crashing down around him. He's grabbing onto straws here.
No, I want to know, Brian, what specifically do you talk about?
A lot of things. Real World Road Rules Challenge?
You hate MTV.
Pot helps.
Okay, Stewie wins this round, fair and square.
Fine. But just tell me this, Brian. Does she laugh on her own, or does she laugh only when you laugh? I thought so.
Scratch that. He wins every round. The next day, Brian walks into a scene that sends shivers down his spine. Jillian has met Peter and Chris, and it seems that they're already fans of this blonde megamind.
And then, think about this. Have you ever seen the sun and the moon in the same place at the same time?
They're the same person.
I know, right?
Move over, Neil deGrasse. We have a new astrophysicist in town. Even Lois can't stop herself from taking shots at Brian, and she's the one who is married to Peter. Brian tries coming to Jillian's rescue, but let's be real here. She has already done enough damage.
Hey, you want to know something cool? I threw up a lot in high school, so I don't get my period anymore.
What the fuck? Brian decides it's best that he scrams out of there before Jillian says something even more stupid. But does it get any better? Nope. Jillian drags him out to meet her friends. And let's just say they're all in the same intellectual ballpark.
Yeah, I'll tell you, if I had a nickel for every time that happened.
Yeah?
What?
What if you had a nickel for every time that happened?
I wonder where all of them met each other. A Taylor Swift concert? His attempts to blend in with the dumb blonde crowd do not go well, and Stewie makes sure he has the front row seats to watch it all go down. Brian soon realizes that he's never going to make it work with Jillian and decides to dump her. But it doesn't go as planned, and because of all the wrong reasons.
What the hell? It took you 3 hours to break up with her?
And that's how Brian narrowly dodged a bullet. Well, a really, really dumb bullet. Better luck next time, Brian. At number 9 on our list, we have an episode where Lois plays matchmaker for Brian. Because, let's face it, finding someone compatible for Brian is like finding a needle in a haystack. Unsurprisingly, the girl turns out to be another walking red flag.
Jane, this is Brian.
Oh, Brian! Lois has told me so much about you. I'm a victim of the liberal agenda. I'm a murdered fetus.
Oh, Brian, run fast. But does he ever give up? Of course not. Next, we find Brian at a bookstore, tearfully recounting his long list of failed relationships to Stewie, who, quite frankly, has had enough of Brian's whining.
I'm sure one day you'll meet a girl who loves abortion as much as you do.
It's almost as if the universe heard him at that point, because right then, he ends up meeting the perfect girl for Brian, and she's not even turned off with his cheesy jokes, so that's a plus.
It's all about atheism.
Oh, I know. I'm an atheist.
Really? So am I.
Fast forward to their first date, and the corny jokes just keep on coming. Seriously, it's amazing how nobody has smashed his face in to stop him from talking about atheism. No wonder everybody finds him annoying.
Can I interest you folks in some of our heavenly cheesecake?
No, but I'll have some of your There's No Afterlife souffle.
Soon, they're rolling through a romantic montage, which ends up in Stewie throwing some grade A relationship advice at Brian, and he buys it without any second thoughts.
So what's wrong with that?
That's why you can't maintain a relationship. You always try too soon and end up blowing it.
Determined not to screw this up, Brian decides to change his ways.
Maybe that's what screws things up? You know, I'm gonna take it slow this time.
Something tells me taking relationship advice from an infant isn't really the best advice, especially when it's an evil genius like Stewie. Soon, Brian is haunted by Stewie, who makes it his duty to make sure that he takes things very slow.
Do you mind?
Oh, not at all.
Boy, that's an awfully loud owl.
Woohoo! Don't do it, Brian! Woohoo!
Knowing Brian, he can only keep himself straight for a little while, and he gives up after a couple of weeks, especially since his girlfriend can't stop giving him some very not-so-subtle hints.
We've been going out for 3 weeks and I haven't tried anything, even though she's been giving me some pretty strong signals.
Oh, I don't know.
So he goes on his way, determined to finally make his move, only to stumble upon a bombshell.
Oh my God! Carolyn? Cleveland?
Oh, hey, Brian. Close that window. You're letting all the stank out.
And if that's not enough to make his jaw drop, there's another mind blower in store for him. Turns out Carolyn never thought of him as more than a friend because of how slow he took things. Cleveland strolls off into the sunset with his potential soulmate, leaving behind a dog full of regrets. And what's Stewie's reaction to all of this, you wonder?
So, Carolyn, guess you should have hit that when you had the chance, huh, Brian?
Quite a way to wash yourself of any responsibility, Stewie. To make Brian feel better, Stewie takes him to a Swedish bakery, and God, that accent makes me want to commit some unspeakable crimes.
Hallo! Welcome to Fjord's Bakery. Would you like a hot piece of pea? It's on the hoose.
Stewie finds out the hottest new couple in town are smooching in the bathroom, and that's just the beginning. They're being tailed everywhere, even in their own home. Feeling bad for his botched advice that cost Brian a relationship with Carolyn, Stewie suggests that he can convince Cleveland's ex-wife, Loretta, to reconcile with him.
If we can get her back with Cleveland, Carolyn's all yours.
The duo goes off to convince Loretta to come back, but they're really bad at it.
What? Yeah, he says he misses that perfect figure.
Fast forward, and Brian gets one last surprise, and it's the worst one so far.
Good, because we're going to elope in Hawaii tomorrow night.
No! Right then, Loretta comes to Brian's rescue, and it seems like Cleveland isn't complaining as well.
I'm no meteorologist, but I'm pretty sure it's raining bitches.
Just as Cleveland leaves, Loretta arrives and apologizes to him for her affair with Quagmire. She begs him to allow her to get their family back together and promises she will never betray him again. Skipping all the Cleveland drama because honestly, who cares about him? We watch as he gets the same Brian treatment and karma strikes again.
Oh my God, Curlin Quagmire!
Cleveland, close the window. You're letting the stank out.
Brian and Cleveland patch things up after a whole lot of drama, leaving us to wonder, how does Brian always end up in these situations? Coming in hot at number 8, we've got one of Brian Griffin's darkest relationships yet, the one where Meg gets seriously obsessed with him, even putting Slender Man to shame. It all starts with Brian picking up a call from his not-so-quick-witted girlfriend, Jillian, where she proves once again that her IQ hovers somewhere around room temperature.
10 o'clock, Eastern and Pacific time.
What? What'd you say, specific time? Don't you mean Pacific time?
Brian's brain cells are actively dying in this conversation, but just when you think it can't get worse. Meg shows up crying. Against his better judgment, Brian asks what's wrong. Turns out, Meg has a prom and everyone on her list is willing to do absolutely anything to get themselves out of it.
I heard you didn't have a date to the dance, and I was wondering if you'd like to go with me.
Hang on. I'd love to go, Meg, but I have to go to my little brother's funeral that night.
Feeling down in the dumps, Meg goes full teen drama mode and threatens to end it all. Brian, who clearly missed every motivational speaker workshop, tries to convince her otherwise, with all the enthusiasm of someone getting up for a Monday meeting.
So fat and gross! I should just kill myself! myself.
Come on.
As a last resort, Brian agrees to take her to prom. He knows what's coming, and he's well prepared for it.
You got any weed?
I put it in your coat pocket.
So now Brian, trapped in a horrific prom nightmare, gets through the evening by downing whiskey like it's water. And honestly, it seems to be working. He even stands up for Meg and gives Connie what can only be described as a brutal verbal smackdown.
You see, Connie, you're popular because you developed early and started putting out when you were 12, but now you can't stand to look at yourself in the mirror because all you see is a whore.
It all goes downhill from there for the couple as Meg gets really attached like a human leech. The next day, a sober Brian finds out maybe letting himself be drunk around Meg wasn't such a bright idea after all.
Well, we should hook up anyway. I'll bug you later.
Well, she seems to have taken a shine to you, Brian.
All it takes is a kiss for Meg to think that Brian was into her all along, and with the kind of excuses he's coming up with, it definitely does not seem like he's even remotely into her.
You know what's strange? I think I might be gay.
Gay!
Frustrated with Meg moving things forward faster than a celeb couple, Brian decides to give it to her straight and tells her that it was all a drunken mistake. But Meg is not backing down. She's gone full-on stalker mode, and no amount of Brian's excuses are going to stop her now.
You do love me, Brian.
The next day, she even bakes him a pie to make sure things aren't weird between them. But just when we thought it was over, it goes from a 0 to 100 real fast.
Oh, this is good. What's in there?
My hair is in the pie, Brian, and now it's inside of you.
Okay, this just went from a rom-com to a horror movie real quick. Brian's in way over his head now, and he knows it. So he finally confesses everything to Lois, who, for once, acts like a responsible parent. A rare moment indeed. Someone should get her a gold star.
That's a great shirt, by the way. I may have made out with Meg.
A shirt compliment is not getting you out of it, Brian. Riddled with guilt, Brian is forced to talk things out with Meg, but what he finds in her room is not so assuring. In fact, it's a sign to get the heck out of there while he still can.
What the hell?
I made that for you, Brian.
He tries to talk some sense into Meg, but it's very obvious that he should have thought of something better.
You're acting like a psycho bitch.
Oh, Meg's obsession reaches boiling point, and she decides to step it up a notch. Things escalate, and eventually Chris, after 2 business days, tells Lois what's been going down. The whole crew tracks them to a hotel, where Meg has tied Brian up with packing tape. And guess who gets blamed for this?
Crap, what the hell is this? Brian, she's a teenager.
Lois finally has to spell it out for Meg that this whole thing is wrong, like we didn't already know that. Some back and forth, they finally manage to get Meg to back off, and Brian is free from one of the worst girlfriend experiences of his life, one that he didn't even want to begin with. Moral of the story, if Meg Griffin shows up at your door with a pie, run. Perfect Castaway takes the number 7 spot on our list. It's the episode where Brian somehow ends up marrying Lois, because in Quahog, a woman marrying a dog isn't even remotely the weirdest thing that could happen to a family. We kick things off with Peter taking up fishing for a living. Yeah, you heard that right. Peter Griffin, the fisherman. His success rate? Well, it's definitely not in the double figures.
Oh, honey, how was your day? Did you catch any fish?
No, but I caught this turtle, named him Terrence, then killed him and hollowed him out into an ashtray for Stewie.
Yep, an ashtray for his infant son. He really needed one. Peter then heads to the Drunken Clam to complain about his fishing woes to the gang. Even Seamus, the one-legged sea captain who's apparently made it his life's mission to make everything as dramatic as possible.
But beware, no man has ever returned. I guess would be the central theme of what I'm trying to get across here.
Blinded by his greed for fish, Peter decides to travel to Pelican's Reef. It's just fish, Peter, for God's sake. He leaves the family to Brian even though he has a perfectly healthy son, although on second thoughts, Chris might not be the perfect choice.
All right, everybody, I'll be back in a week. Brian, look after the family.
Aye, aye.
Chris, don't pick your bum.
No promises.
Peter sets off on his boat with Quagmire, Joe, and Cleveland tagging along for the free beer. The boys eventually find what they're looking for, but the weather has other plans for them.
In local news, we have more on the approach of Hurricane RuPaul, which is working his or her way up the coast.
After securing what they believe to be the catch of a lifetime, the group's celebration is abruptly ruined by a guest no one wants to see, and he decides to ruin the fun with his superb observational skills.
Hey, Death, what are you doing here?
Me? Oh, I'm here 'cause of that.
Oh man, before you know it, Peter and the boys are stranded at sea on a raft made of blow-up dolls, owned by you-know-who. As starvation sets in, Peter's survival instincts kick in with some highly questionable food options.
Bastard, you have food? I don't know what you're talking about. Give me that.
After being presumed lost at sea, a memorial service is held for the sailors with the mayor, Adam West, on a mission to take revenge. From the ocean? Wait, hold up. How did he even get elected in the first place?
You won't be hurting anyone anymore.
Meanwhile, on the deserted island, instead of trying to survive, the guys engage in some deep philosophical debates.
Okay, all right, here's another one. Black or crippled?
Oh, jeez. Several months later, the four men are rescued from the island by a passing cruise ship. As soon as he gets back home, however, Peter gets an absolute curveball thrown at him.
I got remarried.
What?
Well, it was a very difficult time, and he was there for us.
The he in question? Brian, of course. Yep, Lois is married to the family dog now, and apparently everyone is just okay with it. They clearly seem to be doing okay in his absence. Even Meg has something going for her.
And Meg even went on a date with the announcer from the Super Friends.
Meanwhile, under Meg Griffin's bra...
Brian, on the other hand, seems to be getting the short end of the stick, especially with Lois treating him like a complete stranger, even though they're married. Peter is pulling out all the stops to win back Lois, and let's just say his methods are more than a little unconventional. The result? Stewie is left traumatized for life.
Lois, I smell whipped cream. Are you making strawberry shortcake? Ah!
At work, Brian's doubts about his marriage grow when his boss confronts him about Peter's return, and when Lois tries to sneak out at night with a saddle, Brian's suspicions hit an all-time high, but Lois knows the ultimate weapon to distract Brian with.
What's this? What's this, Brian, huh? What's this, huh?
Luckily for Brian, Stewie isn't about to let his best friend get played. He shows Brian the cold, hard evidence of Lois and Peter's rekindled romance, leading to a furious chase to catch them in the act. But just as Brian is about to confront Lois at a hotel, he overhears her professing her commitment to Brian. Yes, somehow, Lois is both cheating on him and staying loyal to him. Classic Lois.
You know, I will always love you, but I made a commitment to Brian.
When Lois gets home, Brian divorces her and she goes back to Peter. The next day, everything is back to normal and everyone in the family is glad to have Peter back. However, Lois admits that she was a day away from giving Brian what he always wanted, and Brian does not look too happy about it.
And to think, Brian, I was like a day away from having sex with you.
At number 6, we've got Brian's international romance fail, aka Brian falls for the tech support girl, where Brian manages to develop feelings for a woman on the other side of the globe, who, surprisingly, isn't trying to scam him. It all starts when Brian calls Microsoft tech support and hears a woman's voice on the other end. Naturally, this is Brian's cue to start flirting because his dusty, outdated charm is still convinced it works, which totally does not.
I am in India, but you sound like a perfect gentleman to me. My name is Padma.
Smooth, right? Despite his outdated pickup lines, Brian can't stop calling Padma, and she doesn't seem to mind. But Stewie? Oh, Stewie's living for this, using every chance he gets to drop jokes that are borderline racist.
How come over there they just talk on the phone, and over here they're all doctors?
Stewie is on fire, but Brian's convinced this is more than just a passing crush. He starts feeling all connected to Padma, like he has with 100 other women before. Of course, Stewie wastes no time in bursting that bubble.
That's nice, Brian, but you're from different worlds. She's in India. That's a lot to overcome.
Desperate to prove his love, Brian decides he has to go to India to meet her, dragging Stewie along for the ride. And so the duo find themselves at the gates of the exotic wonderland, which is waiting for them right outside the airport.
I can already smell the enlightenment and tranquility.
Not exactly a Bollywood movie set. After navigating through the chaos and hopping on a train that looks like it's made out of humans, Brian commits the ultimate blunder when he complains about needing a steak. In India, you can imagine how well that went over.
Cows are sacred. That's right. You are disrespecting our entire culture.
Stewie came prepared and he knows exactly what to do.
Quick, hit the red buttons!
Oh, that came in handy.
Oh, so that's what those red dots are for. At the tech center, Brian and Stewie realize that finding Padma may not be such an easy task after all. Seriously, how does anyone even walk out of that room? Brian can't be stopped, however, and he finds a way to identify Padma, who turns out to be the Indian version of Gorlock, the Destroyer.
Stand on your desk.
Brian?
Ooh, that was a close one. Finally, Brian meets Padma in person and hits her with a pickup line he's been working on all throughout the flight. But be warned, it's toxic levels of cringe.
Because I was having a technical issue with my heart.
16 hours on a plane and that's what you came up with?
Honestly, Stewie's got a point, but Padma's somehow charmed and invites Brian and Stewie to a family party, and Stewie knows exactly what to expect.
Oh, an Indian party! I hope they play that one song with the shrieking nasal atonal woman over the bongos and tambourines.
And guess what the entertainment is? They arrive at the party dressed like they're auditioning for a reboot of Aladdin, but Brian's more nervous about something else.
This is always what it looks like on Homeland right before there's a drone strike.
Everything is going okay-ish until Padma suddenly calls off her arranged marriage, declaring her love for Brian, which definitely doesn't sit well with her father, who spent a small fortune on the wedding. And Brian, forgetting he's broke, offers to pay the dad back.
Great! Just give me a chance to raise the money so I can marry your daughter and make her happy.
Realizing he's doomed, Brian loses all hope until he remembers the easiest way to become a millionaire in India.
Who wants to be a millionaire?
And it's over before it even began. Brian gets the first question wrong, which is followed by a very educational PSA from the census board.
Too many people! Stop with the people!
Eventually, Padma pulls a major plot twist and tells Brian she doesn't want to marry him after all. Turns out, she just didn't want to marry the other guy. Yikes, Padma, you're stone cold.
I realize you do not want to marry you.
Furious and rejected, Brian tries to comfort himself by claiming it was all about the journey. But Stewie, always the voice of brutal honesty, calls him out on it.
No, it's not. This sucked and you failed.
Ouch. And that, folks, is how Brian flew halfway across the world to fail yet again at finding true love. It's only about to get worse from here. Next in, at number 5, we've got Brian dipping his paws into another short-lived relationship, this time with a woman who has cancer. And let me tell you, it's as messed up as it sounds. Sometimes you really gotta wonder why women even bother with him. The episode begins with Brian getting caught trying to sneak out for a night at the club. With a brilliant display of denial about his love life, Brian shows just how down bad he is.
The truth is, you're a selfish horn dog who's getting too old for the game.
Turns out, Stewie is right on all accounts, as Brian makes the saddest attempt at flirting with someone way younger than him.
That seems kind of whack, right? Like zero chill.
Rejected by pretty much the entire club, he meets Jess at the bar, and surprisingly, she can stand Brian. The mystery of why that might be is solved as she ends up revealing something about herself.
I'd been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Oh, cancer?
Meanwhile, Brian's reaction to finding out someone has cancer is as scummy as it can get.
Oh my god, I thought I smelled cancer.
Oh, the two hit it off really well, and Brian promises to stick with Jess to the very end. At a dinner with the Griffins, Brian makes it very clear that he doesn't want anyone mentioning cancer at the table. But you know the Griffins. Tell them not to do something and they'll definitely do it, especially Peter.
Oh man, I love every Tom Hanks movie, except The Terminal. God, what have I done to deserve this?
Their humor irritates him until they leave. After going to Pizza Palace, her prognosis takes a turn for the worse. In fact, it's so worse, they have to send someone other than Dr. Hartman.
You've got approximately 2 weeks left to live.
Brian realizes he has to make the most of the little time Jess has left, and he asks her to marry him. Stewie can see through Brian's facade and he calls him out for it, as he should. Brian's ego, on the other hand, does not let him admit it.
There's no way you'd be marrying this woman if she wasn't going to die in 2 weeks.
Everyone is moved by Brian's act of love. Even Quagmire forgives Brian for all the times he acted like a douche to him. We cut to their wedding soon, which is attended by pretty much the entire town. Right as they're done taking their vows, though, Doc Gravitas realizes it's the perfect time to reveal their first gift.
I want to give you two your first gift. Jess is going to live.
And you can literally hear Brian's world come to a screeching halt. Time freezes as Jess celebrates her newfound lease on life, leaving Brian spiraling into panic mode.
Brian, we
be together forever. Forever and ever and ever.
Jess gets healthier. She also gets heavier, stuffing her face now that she finally has an appetite again, and sounds like Brian is not having a fun time with her accomplishments.
Flatulence means my digestive system is working again.
With Jess's growing appetite and loud digestive system, Brian's dreams of a quick escape are crashing down fast. They even move back into his old apartment with her army of cats. To make matters worse, Jess's mom comes back to live with her, and she's exactly like her daughter.
Mom, guess what? My farts are back.
Mine never went away.
Stewie then visits to see how the couple are doing, and judging by how easily Brian cracks, it's quite obvious that he's barely hanging on.
I gotta get a divorce.
And it seems like our friend Brian is stuck in quite a situation, because the moment he steps away from the marriage, he's gonna be in a world of trouble.
I hope people walk right up to you on the street and punch you in the junk.
In a shocking turn of events, Jess starts choking on her food, while Brian tries to look for help with the urgency of a sloth.
Heimlich maneuver. How do you do the Heimlich maneuver?
But just as Brian thinks he's finally free of her during her funeral, she recovers, which her mother proclaims as a miracle, and leaves Brian in tears. Tough luck, Brian. Coming in at number 4 is the episode Brian's Got a Brand New Bag, where Brian, ever the hopeless romantic, somehow manages to snag a new girlfriend who has definitely hit the ceiling in terms of dating. The episode starts off with Peter and Brian sitting down to watch a kick-ass thriller called Roadhouse. As Peter absorbs the life lessons from the film, it's clear that violence is now the answer to all of his problems.
Peter, the only message in that movie is that every problem in life can be solved by kicking.
And he's already putting it into practice. Way to go, Peter.
Keep the change.
Okay, maybe he goes a little overboard later.
Okay, that is the last time you are gonna pull that crap.
Jeez, somebody needs anger management training or something. In the midst of Peter's Roadhouse-inspired rampage across Quahog, Peter and Brian accidentally ram their car into a girl. Brian manages to score a date with her, using his natural charm, and looking at how smoothly things go for him, it's already setting off alarm bells for us.
Unfortunately, she left for dinner with another guy about half an hour ago.
Yep, called it. He decides to cut his losses and leave his car insurance, only to get caught in a weird situation with her mom.
Is that your condom?
No!
And of course, he just doesn't shut up when he really should.
I would, and not because it's...
Brian gets way too desperate and shoots his shot at her mom, who, lucky for him, is a divorcee. Back at the Griffin household, Lois takes zero pity on Brian and proceeds to roast his already disastrous love life. And boy, does she lay it on thick.
When are we gonna meet the lovely lady, huh?
Fast forward, and we get to see Brian in action at one of his dates, and it's all me for Brian. And I'm pretty sure most of what he's saying isn't even true.
Oh, you ever heard of a tiny little independent movie called Die Hard?
Yeah, nobody is buying that, Brian.
Want a breath mint?
Breath mint.
Wait, what? Anyways, the couple gets caught sneaking out after a night of fun by none other than Lois, and she does not have a filter.
She's 100!
Wait, does Lois not realize she's almost her age? Who is she calling old? Fed up with everyone judging his relationship, Brian goes into full defensive mode and invites Rita over for dinner, so everyone can see just how perfect she is. Of course, with Peter's stellar track record, you already know where this is going. The dinner goes just as well as you'd expect, with Peter taking jabs at Rita left and right.
How about you, Rita? You remember your first dessert?
Realizing the massive mistake he made, Brian tries to bail while Peter is still busy firing off his unfiltered questions.
How old are you? How old are you?
50!
Oh, the dinner abruptly ends with Rita running away crying because anybody would if you're the center of everyone's jokes. Brian, feeling bad for what his family did to her, consoles Rita and ends up proposing to her. He breaks the news to the rest of the family, and while they're on board with the idea, Peter still can't resist giving Brian a piece of his mind.
In 20 years, she'll be 70 and you'll have been dead for 15 years.
Peter is surely fun at parties, right? Later that night, Brian and Rita get a little too frisky, and wouldn't you know it, it ends in a complete disaster. Rita winds up with a fractured hip and has to go to the hospital. Peter probably doesn't understand the gravity of the situation because he's thinking way too far ahead.
You say the word, and I'll go in there with a pillow, and you won't have any more problems.
Brian, determined to stick by Rita's side through thick and thin, soon realizes that things are getting, well, a bit too hard.
Do it, Brian. Do it.
On a simple errand, he can't help himself and cheats with the dumbest chick in the room. And trust me, she has some serious brain rot.
I wrote a book.
What's that?
When Brian returns to Rita with the medicine, the weight of his guilt catches up to him, and he admits his infidelity. Rita, unsurprisingly, decides that he's far too young for her and calls off the engagement. Brian, filled with regret, can't help but agree that it's probably for the best. Once again, Brian's love life goes down in flames, and Quahog remains as chaotic as ever. Up next, we'll show you the episode Quagmire's Dad, and as you might have guessed, Brian's relationship in this one gets very personal, like painfully personal. This wild ride begins when Peter delivers a random reality check to Brian, even though all Brian wanted to do was announce he'd be heading to a seminar.
And someday when you're ready, you're gonna walk off into the woods and die.
Classic Peter, hitting Brian with existential dread before he's had his morning coffee. Later, at the Drunken Clam, Quagmire shares some news. His dad's in town. The gang is excited to meet the so-called man of 1,000 chicks, who apparently has quite the reputation. I mean, it's Quagmire's dad, after all.
My dad's had more pie than Kirstie Alley.
But when Peter and Joe finally meet Quagmire's dad, things immediately feel off, and it's all downhill from here.
Gay!
Seriously, he's not even trying to be closeted.
And a saluty Rudy toot tooty back to you, my friend.
After a conversation that gives everything away, Peter goes straight home and spills the beans.
Quagmire's dad's gay.
Lois, not as convinced as Peter, urges him to confront Quagmire about his possibly gay dad, and let's just say he's very upfront about the whole thing.
It wasn't funny. It wasn't funny. It was gay.
Quagmire, textbook definition of denial, responds by inviting Peter to a Navy ball to prove his dad's not gay, because that'll clear things up. What he does not know is that he's walking into an absolute disaster.
At the Navy ball, you'll see how much of a man he is.
At the Navy ball, all it takes is a couple of minutes and 100 gay references for Quagmire to understand what's happening.
Your dad was cock of the walk, Glenn.
Unable to cope with it, Quagmire decides to confront his dad and end his suffering. His dad, however, takes him on an emotional roller coaster ride. A sigh of relief, followed by a horrific truth.
I am not gay.
I believe you.
But I am a woman trapped in a man's body.
Oh, come on, just be gay.
Quagmire, clearly distraught with the news of his dad being a woman, decides to bring Peter along to a sex change operation. And I don't know if Peter is trying to lighten up the mood or something, but it's clearly not helping Quagmire.
This is not a joke, Peter, okay?
Once the surgery's done, Quagmire's dad, or should I say Ida, now walks out looking like they just got back from a shopping spree. It's confusing for everyone, including the Griffins who invite Ida to dinner. Unsurprisingly, Peter doesn't exactly handle it delicately.
So, Ida, you miss your penis?
Quagmire loses it when the Griffins steer the conversation towards Ida's operation and dramatically storms out the room. Back at their house, Quagmire gets into an argument with his dad over his transformation, and he kind of makes a point.
I don't even know what to call you. My dad?
Feeling hurt, Ida leaves and checks into a hotel, where she runs into none other than Brian, fresh from his seminar and clearly ready to overshare about it.
Brian. Ida. 2 more, please.
The next morning, Brian shares his newfound love with Peter and Lois before showing them a picture of Ida on his cell phone. Peter and Lois go into hysterics when they find out how clueless Brian is.
Here, Lois, take a look.
Stewie sits down with his good old buddy Brian to catch up on whatever has been happening, and that's when Brian tells him about this woman he met who can potentially be his soulmate. Unlucky for him, Stewie has tea of his own to spill, and he's not going to like what comes next.
Quagmire's father is now a woman.
And here it comes.
No, Ida.
After a lot of freaking out, we cut back to Quagmire's house, where Ida returns to apologize and patch things up with her son. Quagmire, feeling better, is excited to hear that his dad met someone, until he finds out who.
I met someone.
What, you did? Really? What's his name?
No!
Cue one of the most epic fights in Family Guy history as Quagmire bursts into Brian's house, and things go from bad to worse in record time. Brian takes an absolute beating, but even through the pain, he manages to deliver one final blow.
Your dad.
Gay!
Coming up is the episode where Brian gets to finally be a guide dog / boyfriend to Kate, who is apparently blind. This story kicks off when Peter and the gang hit the Clam, only to find it packed with disabled girls. Turns out Quagmire had the brilliant idea of hosting a disabled ladies' night, and it's a smash hit.
Quagmire, what is all this?
Welcome to Disabled Ladies' Night.
You've got everything from amputees to deaf chicks, and everyone out having a good time, proving that even they have standards.
Oh, I think I see my friends.
Meanwhile, Brian, ever the opportunist, sees a lone woman sitting at the bar and decides to make his move. Shockingly, Kate is more than willing to go out with him. Brian, however, gets suspicious when it's too easy, only to have the truth come out just moments later.
Oh, my God,
And just as things are going well on their first date, Brian gets hit with the worst news imaginable.
God, I hate dogs.
Oh, the irony. Brian might be the unluckiest dog in the world. In a conversation with Stewie about Kate, he lets out more than he should have.
She hates dogs.
What?
Stewie can't figure out how he's going to make it work, but apparently, Brian has a plan and it involves him being dishonest and manipulative like every other time he was in a relationship.
So I'm just gonna avoid touching her until a little more time has passed.
Stewie, somehow impressed by Brian's relentless stupidity, gives him a twisted compliment.
Like your delusion, Brian.
And so Brian proceeds with his genius plan, pretending to be a very hairy human. Surprisingly, it works. He wins Kate over with his endless lies and gets very creative in the process.
Usually handsome guys ain't so good with their fists.
But of course, it doesn't all go smoothly, and there is plenty of awkward backfiring.
I can help you.
You stay out of this, lady.
When Kate's parents come to visit her and invite her and Brian to dinner, Brian enlists Stewie to help him with another ruse. And this one involves Brian turning into a mummy.
Oh, hi, you must be Kate.
The longer the dinner goes on, the more they have to improvise. Cue the tail-wagging disaster, where Stewie tries to keep Brian from blowing his cover, and everything just gets worse.
It's your tail. Stop wagging your tail.
I can't help it. Do something. Damn it.
Finally, unable to handle the spiraling mess any longer, Brian confesses the truth to Kate. To his surprise, Kate admits that she was willing to overlook the fact that he's a dog, but she can't forgive the fact that he lied to her.
You screwed up, Brian.
Bummed out with losing Kate, Brian mopes around until Stewie comes up with yet another brilliant idea. He can just get a new voice and go out with Kate again. And does it work?
Hey, are you Kate?
Yes?
Hey, it's Noah from J-Date.
Oh my God, hi!
Of course it does. It's Family Guy. For the prized #1 spot, we return to the dumpster fire of a marriage that is Brian and Jess, and rock bottom would be the right word for it. The scene opens with Peter walking into Brian's apartment, only to find Brian casually dousing the whole place in petrol. Is he cleaning? Renovating? No, it's far worse than that.
I'm burning it down so I can fake my own death.
Okay, it's way worse than we thought. Peter only has to push him a little and Brian instantly cracks open.
I can't take it, Peter.
In an effort to make him feel better, Peter tells him all about how his life is going to change as a husband now. And to be honest, it seems like the perfect life.
Get a hole in one, new pair shows up in my drawer, just like that.
After Peter's motivational talk, they take a tour of Quahog, where Peter shows Brian all the good things about being married, such as the sweet release of never having to impress a woman ever again.
Exhale like you never have to attract a pretty woman ever again.
Peter convinces him that married life isn't all bad, but he instead adopts self-destructive behavior by way of massive weight gain. The weight just keeps piling on, to the point even Peter is concerned. You know it's serious when Peter, of all people, is worried about your weight. Should have seen that coming a mile away, Bri. At the doctor's, Dr. Hartman tells Jess that she has to take care of Brian now that his hip is dislocated, and she's ready to return the favor. As his needs finally become too much for her to bear, she convinces him that she's paying for a hip replacement.
She even set up surgery for me to have my hip fixed.
Well, about that. Turns out it's not his hip that's getting replaced, it's Brian himself. That's right. Jess wants to put Brian down because that's totally what you do to an injured husband.
Oh my God, this can't be happening!
When Peter visits Brian at his apartment, he finds out the dark truth and rushes to the pound to save him, which goes to show what a great owner he can be at times. His vocabulary, on the other hand, that could use some work.
Come on! Euthanize, euthanize, euthanize.
He arrives just in time to prevent Brian from finding out if dogs really do go to heaven. They confront Jess in the lobby, and she confesses to why she wanted to kill Brian.
You let me choke to death.
Love, right? They realize they might actually be perfect for each other, considering they've both fantasized about the other's demise. Their twisted love seems rekindled for about 4 seconds.
Well, Brian, I'm sorry that Jess died during the commercial break, but it was a very nice funeral service.
What the fuck? And just like that, it's over. Jess is dead, and Brian is once again single. Maybe we shouldn't get too emotionally invested in Family Guy storylines after all. But Jess truly earns the crown as the worst girlfriend ever, in the most wholesome way possible.